Are we ready?
I'm ready. You guys ready?
Ready.
Let's do it.
All right.
Okay, so hopefully everybody is technology is working and you're able to see everything. If you got a problem, send us a chat. We'll see what we can do to help out. We'll start with our financial disclosures. There's Claire is a salaried employee at Vanderbilt. I own ITN and Team Autism Memphis. And Mallory works at West Tennessee Speech Center. So we're kind of all over the place. Non-financial, you can see everything that we're part of and involved with up on that slide. So moving along, our title slide. And there's a little bit about us. You can reach any of us at our emails if you have any questions after the presentation's over in the future. So our first name at partnersincommunication.org, and you'd be able to find us.
Did you want to introduce the PIC2 concept?
Sure. So PIC2 is Partners in Communication as well as Partners in Coaching. So our basis for putting our heads together and figuring out how to pull from our knowledge of AAC and of coaching we came up with this idea to be able to look at how the communication partner is primary. And if they're primary, then we're not working with the end user, we're working with who's primary, the communication partner, and coaching them. So PIC2 is kind of our tagline, if you will, but Partners in Communication is the website and is the email address. So there's, again, just a little piece about each of us, pretty much the same as the disclosures. All right, so Mallory, our technology guru, put together a wakelet for you all. So if you go to the wakelet or you scan the barcode, you will get all of the resources that we talk about in the presentation, as well as a lot others. Do you have anything, Mallory, that you want to add about the wakelet that's relevant?
We put all of our slides there, and all you have to do to use that is use the camera app on your phone to scan it, and it should go right to it.
Or on a desktop, you can go straight to the URL.
Right. So lots of ways to get the information, but we wanted to make sure you had access to everything because there's a lot of resources that Mallory has included towards the end of the presentation.
We also do have a Google form on there. We'd love to hear feedback, and we would love to get your contact information if you are interested in being a part of research that we are working on in the future.
Right, and the survey form that's on there, the Google form, Google Doc, is just to give us some feedback on the presentation, things that work, things that didn't work. Some of our concepts are pretty consistent with stuff you've heard. Some of our concepts are a little bit different. So my background that you'll kind of see as we talk about coaching comes from a DIR floor time background. I'm a DIR floor time therapist, and Team Autism, we work as a foundational floor time type of center. So our ideas are a little bit different. Whenever we pull things together, we're really looking at that parent or teacher's aide, communication partner, and how they work with the child. So go ahead, Claire, let's get started here. So we got our outcomes. We want everybody to be able to state the importance of parent coaching or educator coaching, teacher coaching, whatever the case may be. We have our learners will be able to list 3 computer-based resources for accessing AAC supports. We think it's really important. We're not advocating in any way, shape, or form that we give an app to a client and let them work on it. That is not the idea, but we do recognize that everybody uses computer-based technology to help themselves whenever they're providing supports for the client. So we wanted to be able to give you some of those resources that we use, but it is not an app that we're using during therapy. It's resources that we use and allow the child to guide, I'll say child, but it could be the adult, the individual that we're working with, to guide this session. And it's just a tool that we use along with that. And then finally, learners will be able to describe the difference in coaching and direct treatment. And Claire will be touching on that as we go through this. All right, so we have all different kinds of coaching. You know, we talk about parent coaching, where we're really working reflectively with what's important to that parent. We have staff coaching, which to me is a little bit different because you're working with a peer. You are working to be able to give somebody information that they may or may not want, which creates some extra challenges for you. Teacher coaching follows the exact same principles. Teacher coaching, though, would have, teachers often have an agenda. There's something they need to get done. So it's a little bit easier for them to come to you with what their goals are. And then there's peer coaching. I don't know how many of you are able to use peer-to-peer interactions or peer support if you're working with children that can use a peer for support in their day-to-day interactions. But peer coaching is a little bit different. So we're really focusing on talking more about parent, staff, teacher. Peer would be a little bit different in the way, the context of how we interact with that peer, that child. Okay, so, all right. Oh, okay, so first of all, we kind of want to find out who is here today. So we have our first poll. We're just trying to find out, are you a therapist who has coached parents? Are you a parent who has been coached? Or are you just not too sure about all of this? Go ahead and, all right. People are figuring out how to use that poll. Mallory, if you need to give us any insight, feel free.
Let's see if we have any questions.
And love that people are willing to admit that they don't know where we're coming from, and that's totally okay. This is a different way of thinking about some things.
Absolutely. And I think what's really interesting that you'll see as we go in some of the research we have, like coaching's been around for a long time, and how in AAC we never gravitated to it, I don't get. I mean, I've been around a long time. And the fact that this whole idea of coaching is rather novel is kind of mind-boggling to me. So for what I do and how I do it, and it's quite impressive when you look back at the research. And I personally feel like a lot of it is because we get so hung up on the technology with AAC. So we tend to think that that technology is the end all to be all. And we've kind of missed the boat realizing that it's the coaching is the technology really doesn't matter. And we have some good research that we'll share with you. Okay, well.
Seems like we have a good audience for what we're talking about then. No one's going to be bored, hopefully.
All right. So what is coaching? You know, and part of the challenge is, you know, we all emotionally code what new information we get based on what our knowledge bank is, what our skill set is. So if you can look at these different group scenarios and everybody could have a different answer what you think coaching is. Claire is going crazy with the mouse there. Sorry,
I was trying to look at the chat and the screen.
I've got the chat, that's okay.
Okay.
So, you know, each of us could have our own reason for why we think a certain picture is coaching. And that's okay. And that's part of the reflective piece that we're going to talk about. So there are several models out there about what coaching is. And for the most part, I'd say the three of us, we agree that everything that what people in the community are saying is coaching. But the extra step that we take is we look at the reflective piece because it's really critical. I mean, there's no reason. There's one picture that personally I feel is coaching. I don't feel like the other three are. However, if somebody presented a reason that they thought something was coaching, and let's take that top picture on the left and the gentleman holding a pointer. Maybe you've been in a situation where you had a mentor that was able to explain something to you and was able to relate to you and pull you along with them. So maybe that's coaching. Maybe that person left such an impression and that picture reminds you of it. So then that's coaching. There's no right or wrong until you find out the details behind why somebody thinks the way they do. And that's what's so critical in coaching with a communication partner. There's not going to be a right or wrong if you don't find out the background, if you don't find out that reason why. So go on to our next slide, and you get an opportunity here to tell us, what do you think is coaching? If you're an athlete, you may have a very different idea about what you think coaching is. If you've never been coached in anything, you may have another idea. So let's see what everybody is thinking coaching is to them right now. And hopefully we'll get a few words pop up. I have to say it's challenging. I keep trying to use my screen that I don't really do. Claire has all the power today. Isn't that fun how it pops in? This is all Mallory, our tech guru. We will give absolute credit because she's come up with all these fun things. So yeah, coaching is all of these things, and what we think of it is great because that's what our knowledge bank is. It's really important to think about when we learn new information and how we assimilate that in. Because that's where that reflective piece comes. So right now, I have a child that does or has done in the past a lot of sports. So when I started learning all about coaching and started doing a lot of my DIR training, which is all reflective coaching, my vision of a coach, of an athletic coach yelling at my kid, telling them they were doing something wrong, or try harder, or you got this, or it's all on your shoulders. That, not necessarily the most positive image, but as I started to reflect on, okay, that's just what I knew at that point in time. So I start thinking about what the outcome that coach wanted, and then I'm able to change how I think of that and can assimilate the new information that I learned. So it looks like we're pretty settled here on encouraging people, teaching, you're fine, reflecting, advising. That's a great word because that it has a pretty open connotation to people. I think the biggest challenge, quite honestly, with coaching is people think sports. I think that's the most common, at least right now. That may change because, especially with telehealth, coaching's become a much bigger part of our society because we are doing so much telehealth. All right, so we have this quote that I really like from Kennedy, and I think for me personally, it's very powerful. Too often we enjoy the comfort of opinion without the discomfort of thought. And something that I have learned about myself in writing notes, not as simple as writing notes. If I write the notes immediately when the session happens, I'm writing really descriptive facts of what happened. But if I give myself time to reflect on what happened, I always find something that I haven't thought about. We here at Team Autism do a lot of videoing. And so we'll video our sessions and reflect back. I would love to say I watch all my sessions. I don't. I watch them when I have time. There's certain kids I might be looking for something with, but we're looking for what we missed about ourselves. So we're reflecting back on that session. And I can tell you, when I take the time to do that, that's where I can get uncomfortable with my thoughts. Like, how did I miss that? Or why did I think whatever? Why did I think that he was in his own little world and I missed that the hyperlexic need at that moment was so great because of all the other visuals going on? So when you can start to really put some time into thinking about it, then you realize your opinions are yours and that's it. That's all they are. So this is just one of those great foundations for reflective coaching. So we got a long, there's a long history, and I just realized my notes aren't at the bottom since I'm watching Claire's slide, so I'm going to pull this up here. But I can tell you, so of course, business, there's a lot of coaching on business when you start talking about transformations of business and paradigm shifts. So coaching becomes a real big model. And one of the things that we've talked about as we're looking at this coaching is consulting. Because I think a lot of times, you know, you've heard the old adage that a consultant is somebody that comes in, tells you what to do and leaves, and they really have no idea what really goes on. They check back in 3 months and then they report that you didn't do anything you were supposed to do. I was accused years ago, I overheard a teacher saying, I was in a room doing some AAC consulting, and I overheard a teacher say, yeah, that's exactly why we don't have consultants come in this room. And it stung. But then when I really started to think about it, I realized, like, I missed the boat. Like, I'm giving them all of these things that might work, but there was no support for them to be able to get there. And I'm making all these assumptions. So I had great opinions. They were my opinions. I hadn't taken the time to reflect. So that's a business where coaching really started from. And then in the 90s, Rush and Sheldon is really where everything started for speech pathology, because they really looked at early intervention. And why would we think for a minute that a kid, particularly under 3, if we're talking about EI, would be best suited with some stranger coming into their house once or twice a week? Or worse yet, going to an outpatient center where they don't know what's going on and nothing is going to carry over to the home. So it made perfect sense that we would look at early intervention, right? So that's kind of where everything has flown out of, but we can embrace that with AAC. I really think and this is just totally my thoughts, with the technology becoming so much more accessible with iPads, even dedicated devices are much easier to use than they were in the mid-'80s when I first started practicing and used AAC devices. So because it is easier, because everybody's more technology savvy. I'm not saying it's easy by any means, because it still can be extremely challenging, but maybe we can move our focus a little bit to more of the model, which is the coaching piece. And maybe we can catch up to some and learn from some of the things that our fellow therapists have been able to do successfully or not. You know, you also think about OTs. I'm not sure if we have OTs on here today, but when we think about push-in model, so many OTs now are in the schools are really using a push-in model. I mean, truly, if you're pushing in, you truly are coaching. Now, if you're using that reflective piece or not, I don't know, but that is really a difference in a model, a big difference than where you're taking a kid down the hall and, you know, or sitting in the hallway with a desk pulled out working on handwriting. So I think we're seeing it across the board, that coaching piece. All right, now I have some research here for you, and all of this is in our
Wakelet.
And it's listed as literature review. Is that right, Mallory?
Very bottom.
But I just pulled a few things that are really important. And I'm left-handed, and I really think that has something to do with, I always start at the back or the bottom. So starting at the bottom up, when you look at in 1965, like, that's a long time ago, that we knew that the transfer of training is greatest when the training conditions are highly similar to those of the ultimate testing conditions. Think about where we know that. Like, you know, we've heard that for years. When kids learn in a certain classroom, they should take the test in that classroom. If kids go for ACT tutoring, they make the test time the exact same test time as what they're going to have on the test. If kids are allowed to chew gum in school, they're allowed to chew gum during testing. All of those things we've learned. These are all research-based things that we know, and look how long we've known this. So it really puzzles me why just now we're really kind of getting to it. Showers and Joyce have a lot of really good information about coaching, a lot of good research. And one of the things that this is mind-boggling. So 10% of participants, so ever how many people we have on there, 10% right now are gonna do anything with the information that you learn. I'm sure that's wrong. For us, it's probably 90%, because you're all here and you want to be here at the end of the day. So I'm sure we're going to have 90% of you that take and do something with it. But truly, 10% implement what they learn. I can think of a zillion conferences I've gone to that I've loved. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. I can do that. I even write down what I'm going to do on Monday morning because that's how I stay accountable. Probably 10% is what I've done. I mean, the research is out there. So if we're teaching parents, we're having in-services for teachers, why do we get frustrated when there isn't carryover? Why do we get frustrated when the core boards aren't on the wall? You know, it's human nature. It's what our research is telling us. But this one is the biggest one. And if only 10% of you do something, go read this article. And this is an article by some researchers out of Ohio State and Lindsay Cargill. I don't know if any of you know Lindsay. She's fabulous, and she's really, really into AAC and her kids with autism at the school she works at in Ohio. But they looked at operational competency, which I think we've always thought of as incredibly important in the past, and functional communication. So they looked at the level of operational competency and then how much was the device being used. And look at the statement there, and how scary is that? The higher the operational competency, the less communication function actually happened in the classroom and at home. Really pretty scary. And it makes me think like, oh my God, how many in-services, how much time have I spent making sure that a paraprofessional or one of the parents could add words and could troubleshoot and could restart and could reset and whatever, could change pronunciation. How many hours have I spent doing that? And how much is that device used? Thinking that if the parent was in control and knew how to do everything, that would somehow magically help them model and use the device. So I think it's a pretty, I think that's really scary. It's really scary research for me, probably because it makes me think about what I've done. Okay, so what is reflective language? This is where the rubber meets the road for us. So when we talk about working with families, working with caregivers, we know that feedback is most effective within 24 hours of a session. That's, again, that's just a known fact. Feedback needs to be knowledge of results. So we stop there and say, okay, we have evaluative feedback. And I do this every day, and I'm like, oh, why did I say that? Great job. Wow, that was nice. I love how you modeled that word. Boy, that was a disaster, wasn't it? You know, I call a spade a spade. That's okay. It's all right I'm not going to say, oh, that was good. And meanwhile, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what just happened? So there's this evaluative feedback, and we're going to all do it, even if we know it's not probably the most productive or useful piece of information. So then we move up to descriptive feedback. Okay, let's talk about what happened. He really tuned into you when you reassured him. So the parent's like, yeah, he was like really with me. We were able to like go back and forth. That was great. Or his smile got so big when you reinforced his initiation, which may be something somebody doesn't even notice when they're really trying hard to model, or they're really trying to like think, okay, what did he just say? What word can I add to it to increase his MLU? So pointing those things out is, okay. Did you see that? Okay, the Zoom session.
Yeah, I got it.
Thank you. Or it looked like, so in this one, it looked like you were rushed to get that assignment completed with Joe. So you're, again, like it didn't go so well, but that's what I observed. So I'm giving it really descriptive value. So that's great. So the participant, the communication partner is hearing me here. They're knowing what they did. And that's good. That's good. It's a step up from evaluative. However, there's not going to be carryover because I'm telling them, I'm still telling them that it's good or it's bad. But when I can reflect with them now, so in my mind, I might be thinking, he really tuned in. That was good. So now I've got to change that to a reflective statement. I wonder why he turned to you so quickly. And wait. And they'll figure it out. One of the trainings that I really springboarded me into reflective thinking was PAAT training, which is out of the UK, and it is not in the Wakelet, but we will add it. I just realized I did not give that to you. But this training, pediatric autism communication training, was a 7-year study. It is absolutely amazing. It is the longest study on language development with kids with autism. And what it looked at is when you train the families versus not training. And these kids got the same other therapy. So they may have gotten other speech therapy. They may have gotten other ABA therapy. But when everything was consistent and you just give a low dose, the whole idea is a low dose. So these parents got training twice a month, every other week for 6 months. And then once a month for the next 6, if they wanted it, if they felt like they needed it. The results of the language growth held at 7 years for the parents that had training. For the kids without the parent piece, they had lost everything. It's astounding. But if you stop and think about it, it makes so much sense. Because once the parents know what to do, they know what to do. They're able to just keep that communication growing. And whether they're doing it with 1 word and adding 2, or they're doing it with 9 words and adding 10, it doesn't matter. It's growing. So it's all about that growth. So if we can help the parent tune into what we're seeing, then they can replicate it. They can keep doing it at home. You know, what were you doing when he initiated that interaction? Have the parent stop and think. Of course, videoing comes in really handy. And you can talk about synchronous and asynchronous. So synchronous, I'm giving feedback right while it's happening. If you're talking about a kid with autism, the challenge with that is you can really break the flow because just your voice may change how that flow's going. If you're talking about a kid that has ID and you talking change just throws them from a cognitive standpoint, you may not be able to get that same interaction back. There's some clients that it doesn't matter if you coach live while you're right there. Synchronous. Asynchronous is definitely my preference. So even if I'm coaching family and I video it, then we can go look at it later. We don't have to look at it right then. Or parents can send me videos and we can look at them together. That's asynchronous. So I'm not right there. I'm not coaching in the interaction. The interaction's happening and then I can coach. And that makes it easy because you can say, so what were you doing when he initiated that interaction? And you can move the video to that point. And they're like, what are you even talking about? Like, oh, here, look. And you can move it and find that spot. And they're like, oh man, he was smiling. I wonder why he was smiling. He must have really, like, he initiated something and I smiled. I was smiling because I was so excited. Yeah, you smiled and he knew he did something amazing. So then you can help the parent to see that that is how the interaction grows. It makes a huge difference. Same thing if it's something negative. What were you doing during that interaction? So let them figure it out. One of the things, what got me on the tangent of talking about PACT is, one of the things with PACT that's really, really critical is that the parent's always right. Always right. So even if they don't say, if you say, what were you doing during that interaction? Like, oh, maybe I should have moved closer to him. Yeah, that could have helped. And if that's what they think, that's what they think, because it's moving closer might help. And maybe that would have slowed you down too. But they're right, because the minute you tell them they're not right, they're going to start to second guess themselves. So super research, and we'll put that up there for you guys. So coaching is a reciprocal process. You know, we got 2 people. It has to go back and forth. We have to see that conversation going back and forth. And you can see our drawing of an aided relationship. And I think about, oh, how many hundreds of times I've done that and not really focused on that reciprocal part. Because that's where reflection comes in. If you don't have that reciprocal piece, you're not reflecting. So coaching is that relationship between 2 people. And I think too, it comes in, you know, when you're talking about parents, and even if you're talking about a peer, a professional peer, what your relationship is with that person is going to make all the difference. And that's a lot of work. And I think that is kind of where we can go back to that Kennedy quote, is the discomfort of thought. Like, how am I going to have a relationship with this person who hasn't always maybe seemed to be interested in what I'm doing or why I'm doing it? So that's a challenge. But that relationship is what the whole thing's about. So then we come to coaching is an adult learning strategy, and we're not going to go into it today, but adult learning strategy, and there are some references in adult learning strategies in your Wakelet. The adult learning is very, very important to know. It's very different than what we're used to with kids. Adults, they tend to reflect on their reactions. They're autonomous. They want to be able to learn the way that suits them best, not the way the person that is trying to teach them is best at teaching. So it's really important that we think about adult learners when we're coaching. And there's some good, if you're looking to dive a little bit deeper, I think it's really good when we look at other professions. So you might look at business coaching. You might look at coaching of educators, things that are outside of our field, because that's where you start to really get ideas of how you can pull it all together. And that's where that knowledge base for us, I think, really can grow. There's a good book called Switch that really talks about change. And it's taken totally from a business perspective, but it has a lot of psychological information in it. And when I started thinking about how I can learn outside the field, that's when I get the ideas of what to bring back into the field. And I think that that's really a critical way to do it. But I think it's a hard thing to do. And I mean, somebody had to tell me to do it. It's not something that I thought of. It wasn't intuitive for me. But I think if you want to do a deep dive, that's the way to really learn more, is to go outside the field. The other thing that's really important is talking about a plan, because this is all about what's important to the person you're coaching. What is it that we're trying to accomplish? It's not what I want to accomplish. It's what that person tries to accomplish. So that is the most important next step. So when we do that reflective thinking, it's that simmering. I actually simmered last night, and Mallory and Claire and I had been trying to think of something, and literally at 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and I was like, oh, and I really think for me, I need to stop moving, and I need my brain to have a break, and then it all simmers, and then sadly I wake up and it comes together. But I've learned the great strategy. I keep pen and paper or my phone, but I try not to get on my phone because that doesn't always work out for me. But I just write it down, and then I can fall back to sleep. But it happens consistently. So now that maybe you've been able to simmer a little bit, let's take some action here and do a chat for us, and Mallory will be watching it, about what does coaching mean to you now? Does anything, reflecting on what we've talked about, how would you describe coaching to parents? What would you say to them about coaching, or why you would like to coach them? Give us some ideas.
I've also posted that on the WOVA platform, if that's easier for you than the Zoom chat. I'm not sure what everyone's using.
Isabel said assisting.
While we're letting them come in, is there anything else in the chat? Because I've seen the chat go. Is there anything?
A little bit of definitely reinforcing how much parent and family training is needed, and some people feeling overwhelmed by the breadth of AT. So. Yeah,
and I really, as Mallory and Claire and I have really been working on this, it really strikes me that coaching is not a new concept, but why could we not pull it in, and why have we gone down so many rabbit holes that weren't productive at all? And I really, the middle of the night simmer on that thought was, it's the technology is just so much that truly your brain can only handle so much. So I guess now what I'm thinking is, with this younger generation that gets the technology, with, even my Mom at 80 has been able to figure out, like, she's Vimeoing kids Halloween money instead of putting $5 in an envelope and sending it. I have 30-year-old adult children that she would still send $5 in a cute little card. So if she can figure out Vimeo and my dad can figure out how to do electronic cards, certainly we can be past the technology issues and move on to how to make it more functional for these families.
I think Brittany really hit the nail on the head here. She said helping parents help their child.
Yes, yes, and thinking that, you know, I've been really guilty of thinking, oh, that parent, they're not going to be able to handle this technology. Why am I thinking that? Why am I making that? Why am I casting an opinion? So thinking that they can handle the technology, you know, our research is showing us that's not the important piece. And I think we've just, it's a mind shift for us. We've got to move past that and not get so hung up on that technology piece.
All right.
Is there
We
any way
need to
to
go in the interest of time.
Okay, so did we, the slides are all in the Wakelet.
Yes.
So you will get all the slides. So non-judgmental, and that's why I brought up about the parents. You know, we're not judging, we're just coaching. We are just helping them to know how to, we're using our expertise to help them be able to interact and support their child or their student. Okay, so very important, know before you go all the characteristics of a coach.
Sorry.
You know, just like we say, you know, from the technology side, we talk about the more you know the device, the easier it is to model and provide aided language input. Well, the more you know before you start coaching, how to be an active listener, empathetic, how to ask reflective questions, and man, that takes practice. Like, try it at dinner with whoever you're eating dinner with, rather than telling them what you think of whatever they told you. Try asking one reflective question. It's hard. It's really hard. It's really hard for me. I'm not going to cast my opinion on you, but it is hard. Be curious about everything. You know, you think about, you know, the statement, especially around the holidays, like through the eyes of the child, and how we lose that as we get older and start coming up with these opinions about what we think. Is really sad, because if we stay curious like kids are, then how much further we would be, because we wouldn't have those opinions that limit us and limit the people that we interact with. Trust the parents, trust the caregivers, trust the teachers. They can do it. We know they can do it. So with that said, we are going to now look at traditional treatments and how we can morph those into some coaching opportunities.
Yeah, so it's definitely not an overnight, you can flip the switch and now we're reflecting, especially if you have families who've been in therapy for years and years and years. We're going to watch some videos of one of my patients who is 13, and she's a whiz. She's great with her device and her mom has really bought into it. But, you know, they're so used to this setup of therapy that I drop my kid off and I talk for 5 minutes at the end, that trying to include mom in that process has been a very slow transition. In the videos that we have, mom wasn't in the room for those. So we're going to look at some of the traditional things. Certainly, we don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's a lot of great things that we're all doing already that we want to keep up. We just want to try to add this reflective and interactive piece as much as possible. So historically, like I said, we're used to working with our kids, but maybe not a caregiver. And especially if you're in a school and you only see the parents occasionally for IEP meetings or progress reports, that makes it very different. And I think that's where we have a little bit of a unintended blessing with COVID, that we've got so many of our families that are doing their therapy remotely. It's the perfect chance to say, hey, you know, gosh, this is new for everybody. This is a new way we're going to look at it. It's a really great opening for that. So let's go to this first video. And of course, the little thing from Zoom keeps getting in the way of me getting to my tabs at the top. Hold on. Go away. Here we go. All right. So this is Zephaniah. She's 13. Oh, you know what? Let me go back out because I did not optimize the sound. I'll start it over.
Emily said, could we move a toolbar?
I don't know how.
Is it the one with our faces, Emily? She said, click and drag it. We'll do the best we can.
Claire, do you have two screens there? Because
I think I had it paused. Is it showing now?
Yes.
Ice cream.
Mm-hmm. Look, and then we can go into our flavors. Do you like vanilla
Vanilla.
or do you like
Chocolate.
chocolate? Which one? Which one do you like? Oh, you can go back and say, I like.
You like.
Mm-hmm. I like.
I like.
Do you like chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that too.
That.
Okay, so you can see a lot of things from that video that are very traditional therapy approaches. There was modeling, there was giving pause time, giving choices, recasting, aided language input. And those are all things we want to keep doing. Those are all fantastic things. And, you know, we want to, if all we have most of the time is time with the kids, we want to give the best interactions that we can for them. But as we go through this, we're going to talk about, okay, how could we start to gradually pull the caregiver into this? How could we transform that situation? So when we look at traditional therapy, we're typically thinking that the clinician is one-on-one with the user or maybe in a school with a small group, but that the caregiver may not be present. A lot of times, and this is the one thing I would love for us to just throw out the window and never use again, discrete trials. Now, we can still target specific goals, but rather than this testing and we've got to get a certain number, we really want to move away from checking the boxes to making sure that we're focusing on true communication and things that are going to be useful for this child once they get out of our room where they see us just a little bit. If we're doing good therapy, are looking at a hierarchy of prompting and making sure that we are not over prompting, that we are varying the level of support we're providing based on the client's state and how they're performing during the task. You know, if they're really just rocking and rolling, we're not sitting there giving them hand over hand support for everything. If they're struggling, it's kind of day they're having a meltdown, they're just not doing well, then we might be doing a lot more modeling and requiring a lot less of those children. And we always, always, always want to have models present in our AAC therapy. If you don't incorporate anything else into your therapy, if you're not modeling, please, please, please begin doing some more modeling in your therapy. Okay, so when we transform this to coaching, suddenly the caregiver is an active participant in the therapy. And like Heidi said, sometimes that might be synchronous and sometimes it might be asynchronous. So if we're lucky enough to have the parent right there and we can pull that caregiver down, you know, maybe the first week it's just, hey, you know what, I want you to join us on the floor while we play this activity. And then the next week it's like, oh, you know what, I'm going to do the first couple, then I want you to try it. So we can gradually pull that caregiver, parent, communication partner in, get them feeling a little bit more comfortable, but make them an active participant in what's going on. And then we can start doing that reflective piece. Now, if you're doing it asynchronously, like Heidi said, you can do discussions about how things went even when you're not together. So if you have video options, great. But even if you don't, a phone call, an email, okay, tell me what went well this week. What were y'all doing when all that communication happened? What did you notice about how they reacted? Were there any events that happened before or after that activity that affected how much they were communicating and interacting? Or, ooh, sounds like that was a really rough week. What do you think happened? Why do you think that it was so much harder to do that skill that we've been working on? How could we try to adjust that next week? What do you think would have helped? What do you think might have helped to go differently? And being that open-ended, open-minded listener. So we know what we're targeting, but we're trying to make it really naturalistic, and we're trying to keep it as close as possible to what the natural environment is. I tend to write my goals for increased communication within the natural environment. It doesn't help them if they can come into my room and use 20 different core words and use them beautifully in my speech room if they never are able to do them outside. So we've really got to think about how those same things that we're targeting at speech can be used at home, at school, at church, at the grocery store, at the park, all the places our families are going. And it goes back also to being a really sympathetic and understanding listener and communication partner with the parent, because our families have a lot going on. They may not have a second caregiver at home supporting them. They may be working at least one full-time job. Some of our families have multiple kids with special needs, and even if they don't have other children with special needs, they've still got other kids at home that need support and help and lost their socks and couldn't find their permission slip. So really being understanding, and in that reflective piece, not judging, well, this clearly didn't go well because you didn't give it the time it needed, but okay, let's think about how we could make that fit into your schedule more easily. Yeah, sometimes we just have those rough days. How do you think what do you think might have made it a little bit easier to interact that day? What can we do to try to keep that from feeling like an extra burden on you and just making it part of your interactions? One thing I constantly am telling families is, I'm not trying to give you an additional hour a day of speech homework. I want you to do communication during your day and during the things you're already doing and want to be doing with your child. But you will notice that our prompting and our modeling are still there at the same level. So we have to educate our families on what is appropriate prompting. And that's where we can jump in and say, hey, he just did that on his own. Why do you think he did that? And so not telling the parent, don't pick up his hand and do hand over hand, but catching that moment where there is success and having go, oh, he was able to do that on his own. He was really interested in that toy, and so he knew that he had to use his device. Yeah, that was great. And so you can talk to them within that reflection about the weighting or giving choices, and what types of prompts maybe their child doesn't need anymore, and how to back that down. And modeling, if we can get our parents to be good modelers all day long, then that child is going to be someone who really takes off. If someone is giving them good, constant language input, both verbally and on their device, that's when we're really going to see a lot of movement. And then, of course, all of our activities are going to come with reflection by that communication partner. This can be a slow process. I've got some families right now I'm trying to encourage to be more actively involved and work as reflection. And sometimes the families just don't even know where they want to start. I had a mom this morning, well, I want her to use more words. Okay, well, what situations do you have every day where it's a struggle? Or what would be something that would be really helpful to you if she was able to communicate? I just don't know. I just wanted to talk more. So, having to help them figure out how to think about their child's communication and break that down into little pieces. But remembering that you're not just talking at them. You're not just giving them a handout and sending them on their own. You want to share ideas, but also listen to ideas at the same time. I will say I was pretty proud of this little diagram, especially because when I was in 3rd grade and I was homeschooling, it took my mom about 4 hours to explain Venn diagrams to me. I just did not compute. But when we look at a successful interaction in the center or a not successful interaction, we have our goals. What am I trying to accomplish? We have our caregiver and how did we support them? We have our user, are they ready to go? Are they ready to work? But in order to really get the puzzle together and make it successful, we have to pull all 3 things together. So the caregiver needs to know how their actions affected the user and needs to be able to look at the interaction and say whether or not it was successful. And sometimes it might be successful to the parent, even if it's not the way we wanted it to look. So we can't dictate for the parents what success is. If they are thrilled that their child did it twice, but you were thinking your goal was 10 times, but the parent is excited about it, that's wonderful. We want to celebrate the successes that families see, that feel like they're seeing, and encourage them to reflect of how they can build that up even further. So we're going to look at a second video of the same patient in a therapy session. And as you're watching or after you watch, in the chat, be thinking, okay, how could I draw the parent into this activity more? How could I put a reflection piece? And if you want to tear apart what I've done, how could you have Claire reflect on what she did in her session? Because we as therapists have to be willing to reflect and look at our issues too. And I guarantee you that I make mistakes and mess up in therapy all the time.
Practice, yep, you want to see? Every time we get a box, we're going to practice our question. We're going to practice what is in that?
That.
Okay?
What is in that?
What is it?
Is it not working again? It keeps popping up and saying it's paused. There we go.
Purple.
Of course you do, okay? What do we need to ask, Zephaniah? We're going to start with our question word.
What?
What? We want to know what is done. We want to know what's in the box.
In.
Oh, what's in there? Let's see. What is it, Zephaniah? See that? It's a teapot. It's something you use to
Drink.
Do you like it or don't like it? What do you think? You put it on top. Okay. Zephaniah, do you like tea or don't like tea? We can start with I.
Okay. So if we were trying to pull family into the interaction some more, or reflect on how it went, if I was looking at myself as the communication partner, or think about how we could transition some of those goals of asking questions, giving opinions into the home, how would we engage a communication partner, a parent, in those goals and means? Yeah, absolutely. What does your daily routine look like? What kinds of things are y'all doing regularly? Okay, this is what we're trying to accomplish. When do you think might be a time we could do that? when is your child really motivated to interact? And that's a huge one of, you know, sometimes if you ask families what their primary goal is or what they want to achieve, you know, it might not be something that the child is as interested in. And we certainly don't want to discount what the parent wants to achieve, but it's so much easier to start if we can figure out what is the child motivated in and grow from there. So, you know, if we're talking about giving our opinions, okay, so what are some things that she really enjoys doing? Okay, we could get those together. How could you talk about your opinions when you're doing, you know, this kiddo, she loves to play on her tablet and she loves to shop for clothes. So, okay, she loves to do clothes. How could we work our opinions into doing clothes? And that might lead to, oh, she could tell me what outfits she likes and doesn't like. She could tell me which colors she wants to wear. She could tell me if she likes my outfit or not. Brittany has said, what are some specific things she enjoys doing at home? Absolutely. So what does she enjoy? Okay, now how could we work some communication into that? Meal times are sometimes good. Favorite foods or preferences. We certainly have kids who it starts with those meals. The big thing with that is my pet peeve is when someone will break up a cracker into 42 pieces and make the child ask for more for each item. So, you know, as you're doing your meal times, make sure you're doing beyond just requesting. So they can request something, but yeah, like Heidi said, they can do shapes, they can do measuring, they can do describing. They can tell you, I love to teach kids yum and yuck. They can tell you whether or not they liked what they had to eat. They can ask you what you're going to have to eat. So you can really get into some additional language once you've got them started in an activity they enjoy. I know Heidi has a kiddo right now who is obsessed with cooking and recipes. And so the mom has gone out and started doing recipe books, and they're using their device to talk about what measurements they need and the order of stuff they have to do them. When does the child get frustrated to decrease frustration? Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, you told me that you're having issues with, you know, your child getting really frustrated in the afternoons. What do you think triggers that? And then hopefully we can think about some ways that the child can add communication in to express that frustration a little bit better, or potentially even to change some of the triggering behaviors. Okay, so you mentioned that every time you get the device out, they pick it up and they chuck it across the room. Okay, well, what was going on before that happened? Did you interrupt their favorite show? Did they really want to be playing outside? What kinds of things were you asking them to do on the device? Because sometimes when our parents are, especially our first starting out, they can get really excited about trying to test knowledge or get the child to perform. One of my very favorite stories ever, I had a 6-year-old who was using a device, and mom took him to the doctor and wanted him to do, "Mom, I love you." And over and over, "Mom, I love you. Come on, show the doctor. Tell me you can do. Mom, I love you. Mom, I love you." And he finally did, "Mom, go away," which I was thrilled with. She was a little bit annoyed that he'd done that. But, you know, he was able to, if we were reflecting on that situation, what made him get a little annoyed and do that? That mom was trying to push him and test him. And that was a behavior for him that then led him to not want to use his device a lot of time. So if we think about what was the antecedent to that, they can really help. Always trying to respond to a communication effort with the device. Yes, absolutely. Anytime our kiddos try, we want to reinforce it. And just like Heidi was saying earlier with our parents, we don't want to tell them, you know, we always want to do it as if they're right. So it's not, oh, you went and activated ball and we're eating cookies right now. You know, oh yeah, cookies are round like a ball. Or after we do cookies, you want to go play with your ball? That sounds like a great idea. We really want to take the opportunity to reinforce any language our kids are trying to do and any efforts our parents are making, because it's not easy to pick this up and incorporate it into day-to-day. That's some great reflection, guys. Thank you.
Hey, Claire, I wanted to add something about when kids get frustrated, because I think this is so typical of like, when are you going to use the device when they get frustrated? Well, the challenge is if you're dysregulated, is not the time that you're going to learn anything.
Yes.
Because when you're really ticked off at your significant other because they left all the dishes out, and you come home and you are just livid. You've been on a 3-day business trip and you come home and the dishes are still on the sink and you are just flying at them and they're trying to talk to you and they say, calm down. Like, I'm getting red thinking about it. You're not going to calm down.
Yeah, absolutely. That's language that sometimes you want to try to pre-teach in situations that aren't stressful. So teaching your kids how to use negation words and how to use words to cease activities when they're not ticked off. Or learning how to, use that reflection piece. Okay, what is it that happens before Johnny gets frustrated, so that parents can see that coming and, do you need a break? Do you want to stop? And help the families empower themselves and empower their children to use those behavior modification strategies. All right, so in this section, some know before you go. Just like Heidi said earlier, it's difficult to share something you don't know. It's hard to coach a family if you don't know how to coach. It's also really hard to assist with a device if you don't know anything about it. So make sure you know how to find the words on a system. You can use a couple bullet points down. There's some sort of word finder feature on all the main dedicated devices. Don't be ashamed to use it. Give it to your parents. If you have kids who are literate, teach them how to use it. Is absolutely one of your best friends. Understanding at least the basic differences in the architecture and organization of devices. When we're doing feature matching, we're really looking at how Snap Plus Core is different from Word Power, is different from Unity, is different from Prolo Quo. And certain kids need certain features. I work at Vanderbilt. We see tons of evaluations every week. I currently have open packets with all the main companies because every kid needs something different. But for me as the therapist, that means I've got to know the differences and I've got to be able to talk about those with the families so that I can help them best reflect on and use the device. Once you've settled on something with a family, taking a class if you don't feel comfortable. Most of the providers offer at least some free continuing education and then some pretty cheap to access continuing education. And that can really help you to learn more so that you can teach more and you can, if you can take that class and reflect on the knowledge, then you can help turn that into some reflecting for the parents. Be very open to learning with the child and with the family, thinking out loud, gosh, I don't know where that word is. Let's look and see if we can find it. Oh, there it is. I see clean with the bathtub. That's where we get clean. And, helping your parents reflect on, okay, you got stuck in that situation. What do you think you could have done differently? What do you think we could have done instead? So if you can't find a word, being okay with using something that's different. Most of our kids, if you're reading a book, aren't going to notice if you don't use the exact same words. So, oh, that's okay. You didn't know where that word was. No big deal. How could we have done that differently? What could you do next time? When we are working on coaching and trying to keep our interactions naturalistic, we want to help our users learn how to model appropriately and model the things that they're saying. And engaging again in that naturalistic communication. It just doesn't get any more important than that. We want it to be as close to what that user is using at home or is doing at home as possible, because like Heidi showed in that early research, that is where the change is really going to happen. Mallory's going to talk a little bit more about some tools for modeling, but modeling is so important. I have done a whole 90-minute class on modeling before. We don't have time to go into all of it here. Modeling on the child's device is awesome if they're okay with it. Some kids and adults don't want you to touch their devices. If that's the case, then we absolutely want to respect that. That's their voice. Occasionally, I've had kids who don't like me to use their devices and I don't have anything else available. So giving them just a little bit of respect. Hey, I just want to show you something real quick. Can I show you one thing on your device? It's always ideal if you can have a second device or an emulator, and Mallory's going to talk about those if you're not sure what that is. But also, these are expensive devices, and I realize that not everyone has that available, especially families at home. Low tech supports and backups. These are also important for when the child throws the device off the top of the parking garage, puts it in the dishwasher, puts it on top of a ceiling fan and turns it on. Those are all things that have happened to families that I've worked with. So if what's going to happen when the device goes down, well, that can also be a good modeling resource. And Mallory's going to talk a little bit, I believe, on some video modeling. But video modeling is something that has a lot of research behind it, especially for our kids with autism, that they really learn well by watching videos. So maybe you make some videos of you modeling the language using the device and make some videos of what those concepts mean. And the child can watch those instead of watching just cartoons or different things on YouTube. It's a really interesting concept. And then of course the videoing can go back to reflection as well, that if you video a session where a family's really modeling and you see things that go well or don't go well, you can pause that video. Okay, what was happening right there? When we look at modeling, it's a stairway. The communication partner is just a little bit higher than the user and is trying to guide them up the step. You can't be at the top of the stairwell and trying to help someone at the very bottom, and you can't be behind them pushing them up. You have to be at their level or a little bit higher pulling them up. So that means if I have a kiddo who has just gotten their device and is learning single words, I'm not modeling, I want to go to school and read a book with Miss Claire. It's got to be go school, go read, want read Miss Claire. So we're gradually increasing that the same way we would with typical language development. And this is something that we have to help our parents understand sometimes too, that just because we have the device and it's capable of communicating at the level of a typical adult speech or even typical for that child's age speech, doesn't mean that they're there yet with their communication skills. And so we can't just jump over levels. We've got to help them lead gradually to be successful. And that's, again, something where that reflection piece comes in. Oh, okay, so I noticed that he put 2 words together right there. What was going on? Oh, I modeled 2 words for him, and then he was able to do it too. Or, gosh, it seemed like he really got frustrated with what he was supposed to say or confused. What happened? Oh, you know what? I modeled 7 words, and I think that was just too much for him. I think that he got confused or didn't quite understand what I was trying to do. So that really comes into our reflection of making sure that we're staying at the same level or the correct level with our users. This is a quote that I think anyone who works with AAC has seen, but the very sad reality that it will take 84 years to catch up to the amount of speech a typically developing 18-month-old has been exposed to verbally if they're only given AAC modeling and intervention 20 to 30 minutes twice weekly. So that's just even more proof, even more reinforcement for why we've got to get our families involved. We've got to put in this coaching piece so that everyone can work together, because we can't do it on our own. It's just not possible. We know that modeling leads to meaningful gains in pragmatic, semantic, syntax, and morphology. That's not the way we're going to present it to the families, but we know that these are the kinds of things that we're looking for increases for functional communication, and then figuring out how to talk to them. Okay, wow, I noticed that you guys went back and forth 3 times there. You were taking some really good turns there with the device. What was going on? So remember, again, it always comes back to that reflection piece if possible. I'm going to touch just briefly. No, I'm not going to touch on aided language because I don't want to cut Mallory off. There's just never enough time for these, but you will see that information in your slides. You'll also see some information on your slides that you can get through the Wakelet. We still have to write goals, and sometimes we need to write these client-focused goals. I write client-focused goals a lot, but I also write caregiver-focused goals. What is the communication partner going to be doing, and how are they going to be interacting in that session? All right, so it is over to Mallory, and Mallory, I will keep an eye on the chat as well as the slides so that you can teach or introduce some of these resources.
Sounds good. Well, now we have some resources to share with you. And as we take a look at these, keep in mind that we're coaching now. So it's not really about what the resource is, but how we go about sharing it with the family. So, if you have some favorite resources that you've done in traditional therapy, the same could still apply here. It's just how we're introducing it and that sort of thing. So kind of some three main sections in our resources are the emulators, like Claire talked about for modeling. If we're doing a lot of teletherapy now, I know I am, we need to have emulators so we can share, and we'll kind of look at a few of those. Some starting points or actual resources that could be shared with a family, and then some further things that you might need to see. I'm a really visual person, so if I can't go back to it, watch someone else do it, or at least look at the steps, then it's kind of lost on me. So we have that for you too. All right, so emulators are what you can download to your computer. They are for you. Claire talked about modeling. These are for you to have on your computer so you can screen share them or reference them. If you think it might be too much visually for your kiddo to handle, you can reference them like, oh mom, the word you're looking for is a green word on the second row. However you need to go about that for your family specific needs. But the ones that you can download from the main device companies are the primary manufacturers. There's Snap Core, and we
do have to sign up as a therapist to get the permanent free version, just so you know.
Okay, yes. I have a free version and it's not full, so that might be what I'm missing. But yeah, so all of these are on the Wakelet for you. Next is PASS. So in PASS, that is PRC's new voice software. So if your kiddo has already had a device for a little over a year, then they might still be on New Voice.
Or it's bilingual.
Yes. You can get the PASS software at the link that we provided. And PASS also has some other features like Write with Icons if you're wanting to make some specific resources for a certain child. Empower is PRC's newer software. There's an emulator for that too. Just the editing mode and that sort of thing are different, but the vocabulary layouts are all the same, and we have a link for that. The next one is Chat Editor from Saltillo. And we're showing one version of the vocabularies, but all the vocabularies are available on these emulators because that's how you're going to model. And so that download link is there. And then if your child doesn't have a dedicated device, how are you going to model that? There are mirroring services like AirServer, AirPlay, Reflector, just the list goes on. Some are free and, may have ads, some are paid. But I use a MacBook so I can just mirror my iPad when I need to. And then you can decide when it's up and when you can put it away. Brittany?
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So
Heidi
will have to monitor the chat because I guess that was when I was trying to monitor the chat and have the slides up.
Okay. Gotcha. I was thinking it was trying to load and was having a hard time. But yes, so you can use an iPad mirroring service or even a document camera. I know Claire has, and some of her colleagues use a doc cam to model virtually if you're in a teletherapy session. And if you just wanted to share, we're going to look at a fun iPad game. So if you just want to share an iPad game and be able to do it together, you can do it there. But we have these resources that help us as the therapist know how to get in there, the nitty-gritty of, okay, now I have this emulator or my child is using this device. How does it work? We've linked all of the resource guides for you, but our caveat is it spun in and was very dramatic. Don't just give these to parents and expect them to understand. Remember the definition of coaching. So it's how you share it, not what you share. So an example I might use here is, you know, we maybe have just added a word with a mom, like, oh, my kid really likes to jump, but I don't know where jump is. And jump's probably on there, but just use that example. We help her add it. And then maybe if she wants to add more, say, oh, well, yeah, you did a great job on that first one. Here's the steps, cut and paste, and send it to her for later reference. So how are we going to share web resources with our communication partners? It all goes back to coaching. We're on the session, we screen shared the emulator, but what do we do next? We, in the past, maybe have printed a handout on their way out of the building, or decided for them what they needed to work on at home, or told them without that reflecting piece. But now we're coaching. So we're sharing without telling, and POG is going to help us. We're just going to show y'all what POG is if you're not familiar with our little alien friend. And then we'll reflect on how we could share that with a parent.
Kids love POG, and I love it too, because most kids that I work with have a hard time with verbs. They can label lots of things in their environment, but they aren't using any action words. And it's really hard to form sentences without verbs. Kids sometimes have a hard time understanding still frame pictures of verbs. So this app is great because the actions are animated video clips. You can click on each picture and the alien POG does lots of different actions. You can make him eat. You can make him sing. The other thing I love is that you can tell him what to do by typing it out. And if you happen to make a mistake, POG tells you about it. This is great for helping kids learn letters and spelling, or to just get them started on a keyboard.
So that was POG. Then we have two statements for you. So which one do you think would be the most effective in your coaching relationship with a family? Number one, look at this app. I think you'll like it. It's what I was telling you you need to do at home. Or number two, I wonder what your child would be interested in. Let's take a look at that resource together. Maybe he likes jumping, and help POG jump. So which one in our chat box, which one would y'all vote for your coaching relationship with families? Two, yes. All right. So for the sake of time, yes, Isabel too. We'll jump right into these next starting points. So these are just a few of the resources that we put together that you can share with a family, just kind of to put you on into different directions. And I won't tell you about every single one for the sake of time, but Dynavox has some activities to go and core word books that you can find at this link to share with a family, maybe do one together. Language Lab, the same thing. You know, it's by PRC, but you could use it with any child, vocabulary-wise. You would just, for these things that are pre-made, you would want to go over it one with the family first, so you share it with them and then see how they can grow together. Christopher Jansen is the one that Claire referenced earlier when we're thinking about video modeling. And you can see all his playlists on YouTube. He has modeled many core words and fringe words for visual supports on Unity. So if your child is using Unity, you can give his channel a look, and they're really, really short clips that can just be screen shared or used in your therapy room if you're in the office. Practical AAC, I feel like everyone knows about this, but in our Wakelet, there is a link directly to the picture that's showing Sarah Gregory's take on pivoting teletherapy for AAC learners, and tons of other resources there. Lesson Picks, they have a sharing center that, you know, if you're a member, is great. to look for resources for families, again, to do one alongside them and then see how they grow. Teachers Pay Teachers, a personal favorite of mine. Free and paid resources to transform your practice from traditional to coaching. You can, again, share with the family first, do it together. And the AAC Coach, another personal favorite. Her ideas she posts in square infographics, more or less, and gives you ideas on how to reflect with families, or what how to adjust attitudes or beliefs, or limiting beliefs. She goes into all of that. She's really great. And that's just an example. You can read some of what she says. And then their platform is actually the platform that I use for teletherapy, and they just put out on their blog recently, I came across it, some activities and icebreakers. And on the next slide is an example of one of those things that you could easily use in a coaching situation. But remember, even though you might not be face-to-face, you're on teletherapy, good old-fashioned toys are still just as good. Your resources, because you're doing teletherapy on the computer, doesn't mean everything you do has to be on the computer. You're still a real person, so you can still use real toys. It's not what you share, but how you share it. So now let's reflect one more time. Think about one of your kids, their individual interests, and choose something you could share with their communication partner in your coaching relationship. Is it a core word book? Is it something from Teachers Pay Teachers? Is it a video model? What are some of your thoughts so that y'all can put that into practice when you get back?
And just in the interest of time, we'll keep answering that, but I'm also going to move to our last video. We have one more video for you guys that is a parent reflecting on their experiences with coaching. And while that's playing, please put any questions you have in the slides. I'm not going to pull up or in the chat box, I'm not going to pull it up since that seems to block the video from playing correctly, but Heidi and Mallory will be happy to answer any questions that you guys have. And I'm not sure about them. I know I can stick around for a few minutes once we're done if people have additional questions. Because we had thought this was at 3 o'clock Central, not 2. So we blocked our schedules wrong.
This is a parent that I've been working with, and we have been meeting for just a short while about her son's new communication device. So Jennifer, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Jennifer. I have a son who's 7 years old. He has Down syndrome and has some difficulty with communication.
Let's talk about maybe what you found the most difficult about starting AAC, whether it was actually starting or just any limiting beliefs that you may have had, and how the coaching interactions that we shared, how that kind of helped move you forward.
Okay, so certainly I felt after looking at it, because the layout is a little bit different from what you would expect. It's not just a text to speak unit, and so really having hands on it myself and just quiet time myself to understand how the layout is and looking at it was going to be more beneficial in the beginning.
What was the easiest part about incorporating the device into your day-to-day lives?
What I can do is I can have it out all the time, and so when an opportunity comes up, because it's just right there, I can just, it's just simple kind of reinforcing and modeling some things that he may say or be excited about. And as I have spent time with the device on my own, I was able to more quickly incorporate that and do the modeling. Had I not been familiar with the device, I may have lost that moment of connecting with him
Mm-hmm.
because I'm fumbling trying to find where I need to press. So I was able to have some more familiarity with the device and therefore capture those moments where I was able to really make connections with Tyler in a positive way and have him, you know, kind of reverberate that excitement. And I think that the lead was really from you, you know, the way you were showing me about how to model was really important because you asked me kind of what what the challenges were. And, you know, I feel like I maybe had gotten a little bit lost, but what I was going to say is, you know, just knowing where to get started. I mean, what does that modeling look like?
What is it?
What is it? And then, of course, you know, his readiness to learn. But it really didn't hit me until we saw where that fit in.
So
Just
that's where we problem solve together.
exactly
We
knowing what kind of
found,
mood he is in.
yeah, we found something that, you know, you had lots of knowledge by that point, and then we found, well, is there a better way that we could do this? And so we worked through it together. So very good. I'm glad that you shared that part. In our sessions together, we've had, you know, of course, there's times when I have to tell you, okay, well, this is how you adjust the volume. This is how you turn it on and off. So that's more, you know, just kind of getting those tasks done. So our sessions mostly, though, have been more about problem solving different situations together. Tyler really enjoys this. What are some words we could model? So in your experience and for your learning style, do you feel like that sort of learning is more beneficial for you rather than just learning what it is to model, but maybe having some things to put into practice that we collaborated on together? Tell me
Certainly.
about that.
I mean, and that's kind of how, you know, all the therapies that he's been involved with, the success comes from that feedback on this is what I'm observing, you know, maybe we could do this way next time. Certainly that feedback is very valuable.
Or exactly what you're doing is perfect.
Mhm.
That's another feedback that sometimes we forget to tell ourselves.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that this has been going I really can't think of anything else that would have been better.
And so my last question for you is, through this process and the journey that you are right now just with AAC, what have you learned about yourself and your child through this communication journey?
Yeah. So, you know, always it makes me feel good and it just warms my heart to know that, you know, anything that I'm learning that's going to help Tyler develop and grow is really exciting. And I've always just been his biggest advocate and champion, and I never underestimate his ability. And I was just very gobsmacked when in the office selecting the device, he did so well on it and with his initial presentation. And so I just never underestimate his ability, and I'll support him, you know, as we go through.
Yes, very, very good. And, you know, one thing that I think you mentioned, but that has really been our focus is, and you were the one that brought this up almost every session, is how do I connect, or we figured out a great way to connect. And those are the things that we're problem solving about together. And so communication is about connection and not how much we know. And I figured you and I have figured out together the best way to kind of approach that with Tyler. And you've done a really great job. I'm very proud of that.
Thank you. You know, that was really the thing. We struggled so much when he would be gone at school, just trying to communicate about his day and have that. Everyone wants to talk to their kid about their day, you know, and just know what's going on. And I mean, just simple things like, why didn't he eat a snack that day? Was he sick? And then he can't tell me, and he couldn't tell me that they had cupcakes for another child's birthday. And I think, you know, had he had the device and been able to use it, we could have had a conversation about it. No, I didn't eat my snack because we had cupcakes, and it was way better. And I sang happy birthday, and you know, that kind of thing. So
Very good. It was very great to hear from you and your experience. And thank you so much for sharing.
All right. So obviously Mallory's doing awesome work, and also everyone just give her a little bit of a round of applause. Heidi and I are both seasoned presenters, but this was Mallory's first time, and she did awesome. These are our partners in communication emails. Like Heidi mentioned, you are welcome to touch base with us if you have follow-up questions now, next week, in 6 weeks, in 6 months. We are really excited to be sharing some of our experiences, and we're in the middle of doing a lot of research that's required us to do a lot of reflection and to figure out exactly what we're trying to accomplish. So the Wakelet smart picture thing, I don't know, that probably has a name, QR code, I think, is down there in the bottom. You can still access that if you didn't get it at the beginning. It has all of our resources. It has a copy of our slides on there if you weren't able to get down all that information, or some of the sections we had to move through a little more quickly just for time. Just a little bit of a plug, if you ever attend national conferences, we have proposed 2 sessions for RESNA next year to be looking at some of this in a little more depth. And of course, would love to see any of you there. And there is that feedback form on our Wakelet, the Google form. We'd love to know what sounded good, what didn't sound good, so that we can reflect on this session and continue to grow as presenters and therapists ourselves. And then there's also in there a box if you want information on the research that we're working on and being a part of any of that. Any final questions anyone has before we have to get kicked off of here? And I know I still have a group session to lead for the rest of the day. I'm not sure what everyone else has going.
Brittany asked, sorry.
No, go ahead, Mallory, you got it.
Brittany asked, what device was Zephaniah using?
Zephaniah is on an Accent 1000. She was on 36 location Unity up until June. I actually started her via telehealth, and that's what she had been given by her previous therapist. And then once I started seeing her in person, we moved her up to 84 location Unity, and she's rocking it. She's had her device for less than a year, and I am so proud of her.
Alrighty, I think that was all of our questions.
Hey guys, this is Rebecca. Well, I'm appearing as Janice. And I just want to do a $50 Amazon card giveaway door prize right now. So if one of you hosts can pick a number between, let's see, 4 and 19, we'll give it away.
11.
11.
Perfect.
That's what I was thinking.
Katie Loudermilk. Katie Loudermilk. Let's see. I'm going to unmute. I can't unmute her. I'm not a host. Okay. Well, Katie Loudermilk, you're the winner of the $50 Amazon gift card. Congratulations.
Yay!
Thanks, everybody.
There you are.
I'm so excited. I don't ever win anything.
I know.
Well, thank you all so much for sticking in for that last session of the day, and for reflecting and interacting with us as well. It makes it so much easier to present when you've got feedback coming through.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.